All right, Jim Gale has been nice enough to join me here. He started Galt's Landing. What is Galt's Landing?
Galt's Landing is where our families live. We have 4 families living there full time, 100% off the grid. We are demonstrating the solution to all of the world's biggest problems, which is stewardship and service. And it's like paradise, and everybody's invited. We have Airbnbs, people can come and stay with us and experience what it's like to be surrounded by almost 300 different types of edible and perennial plants, like everything you can name, from avocados and bananas and all the citruses and grapes and passion fruit and so on. And we are here to show people what it's like, because once people experience what it's like to live this way, then every backyard in America will transform from a lawn into a food production system.
One of the things I thought was really fascinating about your talk at the Rogue Food Conferences where you were speaking is, because a lot of people who follow my stuff are part of the sort of resistance mindset to the government's overreach of what they call overreach of control over our lives. And you said something about inviting the government in. Okay, that might sound a little scary to us. What do you mean by that?
Well, we could fight the government, and that doesn't work too well, or we could invite the government very publicly. So what I'm sharing is a strategy. And to get real specific, we have declared that we are free about 4 years ago. What does that mean? That means we very publicly do not pay slave taxes. Taxes on land or labor are not ethical. They're not justified in any logical free world. So we have said, nope, we're not doing that. And then we've built food forests for schools. We've worked with local churches. We've built abundance creation systems for our community. And a government agent came about 1.5 years ago, and he said, I'd like to see building permits. Well, when I got word that he was on the property, I recorded the conversation and I said to him, my name is Jim Gale, and how did you get permission to come on this land? Implied consent is not granted, and it's posted. And I expected him to be kind of an authoritative energy. Well, instead, he said, I'm sorry, the gate was open, so I came in, but I will leave if you want me to. At that point, I said, well, maybe, but before you leave, I would like to show you something. So I invited him in to the food forest, which was just a little bit away out of the construction zone, and I said, we are here to be the stewards of this land. And the agency that you represent has lost its moral authority. We cannot comply with you because compliance with what you do, which is to allow the poisoning and destruction of everything, will lead to the death of everything. And then my daughters, well, we won't have a world to live in. So instead, we invite you, and we are here to work with you, to collaborate with you, not under you and not for you, but with you to create what you say you want to create. And that's health and wellness and abundance for our community. And he got tears in his eyes. He said, you're right. We will never bother you again. And they have not been back.
And who did he work for?
The government there in Osceola County.
Okay.
Yep. And again, these people, I know several of them. They're good people, and they are following a system that is not good, right? So we're inviting them, which is one of the reasons they haven't come back, because this public argument, this public debate, when the cameras are on and we say, this is better than that, and we point to that, like every HOA community around us, they are biological death zones, right? So we can point to a place of radical abundance, which is like the Garden of Eden narrative or ideal, and then it's hard to argue with. So instead of fighting us, they ignore us for now. But very soon they will be collaborating with us.
Okay. All right, so no property tax.
Yeah.
And did you say no income tax?
No, I will not pay tax on land or labor.
Okay, and so far nobody's bothered you about that?
Nobody's bothering me, because bothering me, or even I've went all the way. I'm all in because I truly know that faith and courage is the armor of God. And fear is a control mechanism of the slave master. So I said, no, I will not comply with the slave master evil anymore. Instead, I'm just going to live free. And then that conversation, they do not want to have that be a public conversation, because we are demonstrably in the right.
real fast, could you recount that story about the church? Because you talked about churches in the process of cultivating, I guess, the freedom mindset or the non-fear mindset.
Yes, and ultimately it's a biblical principle of stewardship, right? We are here to be the stewards of this great land. And so we invited some pastors in, and now we're working with pastors in several places throughout the nation to demonstrate stewardship to their congregations, right? What is stewardship? The lawn is not stewardship. Right? Stewardship is transforming our land into a land of abundance, planting seeds or putting a fruit tree in the ground, one fruit tree in the ground when it has decent soil and a little guild. And by the way, a guild is a community of plants that support each other, right? Like the rainforests around the world. Who manages them? Nature or God? So we're creating these systems, modeling after natural systems, and then the result of that is exponential free energy and abundance.
And what did you tell them one time when you were at a church that had a fertilizer? What was it, an herbicide sign?
Yes. So I was invited to speak at a church, and I walked up and I went around. I love going around the land on the outside of these organizations when I speak at them. And I pulled out the sign that said it had been sprayed with basically BlackRock's chemicals Roundup. And these chemicals are poison, right? By their fruits, by their deeds, you shall know them. So BlackRock is not only the name, it is their intention. So we actually pulled the sign out. I walked in and I started sharing, that this is the ultimate ignorance. To willingly, and willingly is a misnomer because willingly implies the awareness of choice, right? People simply aren't aware that this is the most destructive thing we could ever do, is spray poisons on the land that our animals and kids walk on.
Yeah. Okay, so big picture, I mean, somebody might be watching this and like, well, okay, he's getting away with it, but I'll end up in jail. What do you think, I guess, what would be the mindset you would encourage somebody who doesn't live in your community or is just hearing your message? I mean, where do you start moving on this?
Thank you. That's such a great question. You start by planting the seeds of awareness, the seeds of faith and courage, right? Don't go out and scream at the government, say, I'm not paying taxes. You might end up in jail, right? And I still might end up in jail. I'm not saying I'm not going to. I'm just saying that I'm all in and I will not live under fear. So the strategy then, and I've been working at this for a while. I've been playing with this for a while. The strategy is ultimately a strategy of service. When we serve ourselves, our land, our families, and our communities, and when we do so exponentially, and when we put that on film, and we offer to be the service, then it becomes a voluntarist society, right? Mass adoption of voluntarily serving literally solves all the world's problems.
Okay. And what would have been if there was one or two motivators for you that got to this point? Because I think you mentioned that for a while you weren't this guy. I mean, you weren't always this guy. No. I wasn't always this person. I was a TV reporter for a long time who didn't ask a whole lot of questions when I started to. And in my career, I left the system. I mean, I think you do kind of leave the system once you wake up. And a lot of the people who are still in the system, it's not necessarily that they know better and they're just evil-minded, masterminds. A lot of them are just asleep, just like I was, and just like you were.
Just like I was.
So what were the things that woke you up?
Well, ultimately, it was my own failure and my own suffering that 4 years ago, after making a lot of money, I found myself dead broke. And again, on multiple occasions, it was the government that did it. This time, it was called COVID, right? And the government shut down my business, which was at a mall, because of this narrative that you can't walk around because there's this evil thing that's going to get you. And all of a sudden, I had invested everything I had for 15 years into demonstrating the solution until I found myself broke, and I was bawling, and I literally stepped in and I said, God, what can I do? And at that moment, I was so sincere and so in the presence. All of a sudden, the light bulb went off, and light mente. I all of a sudden released all of the fear, and I literally opened up my eyes, and I was walking, and it was dark outside, and I could see more clearly. I'm like, oh my God. And I was still broke, but that was the start of the new word, the new explanation, the new awareness that all of a sudden led to a rapid escalation in abundance. And now I'm sitting, living in paradise, free and clear. Everything's paid for and we have everything we need. And I'm donating everything else, all of the surplus, back into humanity, because it is the most selfish thing I could ever do, is serve as many people as I can.
How can people find out more about what you're doing and follow what you're doing?
So there are Jim Gale. I've done a lot of podcasts, hundreds and hundreds, and speaking events. If you want to become a steward of the land yourself, foodforestabundance.com. You can check out what the designers do there. We are also creating an economic engine called originsreclaimed.org, where we are bringing all of the product and service suppliers together, creating a world map. And then you can click on this world map and you can say, who in my area produces poison-free eggs, poison-free milk, poison-free whatever it is? Who in my area knows how to talk in a lawful way to stand up for freedom? Who's going to stand next to me if there's somebody trying to harm us, right? So we're creating this local system with a global network, and we're donating this to humanity. And then here's the kicker. We're going to take all of our surplus that comes in from this system where you can find all of these products and services, and we are going to put food forests in schools and prisons and city parks. And we are going to catalyze a shift in awareness that leads to mass adoption of using our resources wisely. And then peace on earth is our prize.
Don't forget to support the show and get your greenpasture.org, promo code Allison, 10% off at checkout. This is the fermented cod liver oil, butter oil blend that I've been taking for over a decade. It really helped me with dental health. I used to get cavities all the time. After taking this, I go to the dentist and they were shocked. I had no cavities, but they never really cared why. Anyway, you get 10% off if you use Allison at checkout, greenpasture.org. They've got plenty of other great products. This fermented cod liver oil, concentrated butter oil blend, though, is my favorite. Weston A. Price, who was a biological dentist, turn of the century, saw that his patients were starting to get cavities due to industrialized food. This is basically the formulation he came up with. You get more out of both if they're packed together instead of just taking one or the other. So greenpasture.org, vitamin A, vitamin D, all kinds of omega-3s. Go over, do that. Get some stuff to support your immune system, to support your health, and support the show. See you next time.